Cricket certainly found its voice again with the 20,000 odd people who were at the SCG last night. But Team India couldn't find theirs. Their jersey found a new color, but Team India certainly looked off color in that first ODI against Australia. But now it's time for us to turn our attention to the second of the three-match ODI series between India and Australia. And joining me as we look ahead to this encounter are two individuals who never lose their color or their voice, Mandira, Lalvani and Ayaz, Memon. Mandira, Ayaz, welcome to another preview.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anubhav.
Very close to losing color and voice today.
It certainly won't happen. I can assure the guests of that. Ayaz, we'll kick things off with you. What did you make of that first ODI, especially of India's performance in the first ODI?
Well, certainly India were undercooked. I mean, batting or bowling, even fielding, though both teams dropped catches, but Australia's ground fielding was far superior. So I think completely outplayed by Australia. And look, there's a tinge of irony to it. All the Aussies who kind of fumbled and stumbled, not all, but all, barring David Warner, almost all of them did during the Indian Premier League. They all came good here. Whether it was Adam Zampa or Aaron Finch or Stephen Smith or, Josh Hazelwood.
Glenn Maxwell,
all of them. They just seem to come, and it just shows what a difference. No, the point I'm trying to make is what a difference a change in format can make, and change of pitches and grounds. In a 65-yard boundary, I mean, Hardik Pandya wouldn't have been caught on the fence in a T20 match, but here on an 80-yard straight boundary, he's caught at the fence. So things like these, they make a big difference to the outcome. But I think overall, India were outplayed. Obviously, some of the things have been highlighted by Kohli in his press conference post the match. Most notably, the lack or the absence of a sixth bowler, somebody who he could turn to when even Bumrah is getting, blunted. In fact, not just blunted, but hit for runs. And Yuzvendra Chahal, these two have been your best bowlers in terms of pace bowler and spinner. And then who do you turn to? You have nowhere to hide. And that's what happened. And then you're chasing 374. You have to start at a frenetic pace, which they did. But I think they were undone by the bounce and some very clever bowling by the Aussies. So overall, basically comprehensively outplayed.
That's right. The writing was certainly on the wall. They say you either win or you learn. Mandira, what positives could you take from India's performance in the first ODI?
The batting, despite being 101, 104 for 4, at one stage they managed to put a pretty decent score. The heroics unfortunately went in vain because of all the reasons that Ayaz pointed out. Look, the first ODI was very, very important, first and foremost, to just get, just to get a leg in pretty much, to suss everything, to understand what the weaknesses are, to shift to Australia mode. Lots of holes to plug, not least of which is what we discussed the last time, the absence of that sixth bowling option. We cannot afford for even one bowler to have an off day because there is nobody who's going to come and bowl those few overs. So being that as it may, the lessons to learn with the squad as is, I don't think they're going to make any changes or they should make any changes, but with the squad as is, definitely what can be plugged, the holes that can be plugged are the fielding. The fielding was all over the place. It was completely in shambles and completely shoddy. They dropped sitters. It was, and that also ends up putting more pressure on the bowlers. So I think the fielding needs a lot of sharpening. The bowlers, again, they were bowling short of length a little bit, especially in the first few overs. And in Australian pitches, you have to get used to bowling certain lengths. So I think, like I said, the first ODI has been really important for them to take home the lessons they need for this one, because they don't want, to just hand it over on a platter to the Australians either. So yes, the batting definitely is a plus. Outside of that, the lessons to learn and can be improved on are definitely the length of the bowlers as well as the fielding.
And both of you spoke about the shoddy fielding. I came across this tweet on Twitter which said, "I don't know why these teams are in quarantine. They can't catch anything." which I found pretty funny. But Ayaz, Mandira, both of you remarked on the bowling being underwhelming. Of course, conceding 375 runs. Jasprit Bumrah going for about 79, Saini going for 83, Chahal going for 89, the most that's ever conceded by an Indian spinner in ODIs. Of course, taking nothing away from how well Warner, Smith, Finch, as well as Maxwell played. Would you be tempted to make any changes to India's bowling? Because you have Kuldeep Yadav on the sidelines. You have T. Natarajan, who's been called in as well because of Saini's back spasm. You have Shardul Thakur, who could be a possible replacement. So for the second ODI, Ayaz, would you be tempted to perhaps play one of these names?
I would be tempted to play Natarajan. especially if if Saini's got a back spasm, it adds a little variety to the attack. Left arm bowler is far more accurate, as we've seen in the Indian Premier League, but we'll have to wait and see what he does on Aussie pitches. I think what the point Mandira made is very, very important. You have to know the right length to bowl. You can't bowl the length you bowl in England or in India or the UAE. So by now, 15 days they've been training, and they've all been to Australia earlier, including Saini, I think. So by now they should know what length works and what doesn't, and work their tactics accordingly. Having said that, I think the Indian team is still in a big quandary, because apart from Shardul Thakur, who can tonk the ball a bit, all the other bowlers that you mentioned, they are, they don't have any credentials at all as batsmen. So what's happening is your 4 bowlers don't contribute, or you can't depend on them for runs, unlike say for Australia, where they've got Mitchell Starc and Pat Cummins and some of the others who can bat, even Adam Zampa. And therefore it also means that your top 6 batsmen, which is from Mayank Agarwal to Pandya, at least 5 of them or 4 of them have to score heavily for you to be in the game. Now I know that Mandira has said that the batting came good, but it was only 2 innings actually. Shikhar Dhawan and Hardik Pandya, and you still lost by 66 runs. That's a big margin, So this was a flat track. 300, getting 300 was creditable after being 101 for 4, but it showed up the lacuna in the batting. And remember, also in the bowling, the problem is that you don't have players or batsmen like a Tendulkar or a Sehwag who could pitch in with 4-5 overs, or a Yuvraj Singh, 4 or 5 overs, 6 overs, sometimes even a 10-over spell if it's a good day. So you have to perforce go back to the same bowlers who are being hit all over the park. And that can be very demoralizing for everybody, including the batsmen, who now, every over they'll say, "Arey baap re, pata nahi kitna score chase karna padega." And it starts telling on your mind. So they have got serious issues, I think, in the Indian team. The way I see out is your batting needs to kind of, steel itself to making 350. That becomes a challenging score. Or if you have the ability to chase 350, then you can, nowadays you're not chasing 275, 280 any longer. You're chasing 300, 325, 325 plus. And with your bowling attack, if it's under so much duress, you might be chasing 25, 30 runs more.
And speaking of that, I think what happened in the first match was also that India failed to capitalize on 2-3 fantastic opportunities that we had. Like right at the start, Mitchell Starc was bowling so uncharacteristically. We made fantastic runs, but couldn't build on that. Virat Kohli was dropped on 1 run, but he went on to score just 21. So there were chances that could have been capitalized upon, but we missed those.
Correct.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Go on, Ayaz.
No, I think there was a bit of a flutter chasing 374, and which after you had got 15 4 overs, Mayank Agarwal and Shikhar Dhawan, and thanks largely to Starc, not to their own contribution necessarily. I think Starc bowled some very poor overs. He was the lone man out, for Australia, performing poorly. But having got to 15 4 overs, maybe there should have been a tactical shift that you don't have to go and hit every ball. Even Virat was playing so many strokes that it almost seemed like, he can get out anytime. He's playing a very high risk game. So somebody like a Shikhar Dhawan quickly adjusted and, settled down and played a long innings. Of course, he became the anchor. He played the role of the anchor when he realized that Hardik is batting more sensibly. And of course, by then, maybe the Australians felt that they had the match in their bag. So maybe they just about relaxed a little bit on the pressure, though I don't think that's true of the Aussies. But what I'm saying is that they could have changed their tactics, but look what happened, the dismissals. Mayank Agarwal trying to, pull the ball or hit a ball over cover, beaten by the bounce, extra bounce, put it up in the air for a skyer. Virat Kohli, just when it looked like he's settling down, he gets a short ball which he's trying to pull and again beaten by the extra bounce. And then Shreyas Iyer just caught in a very ungainly position. I think even the last time when the Aussies played against India last, they tested him and got him out a few times with the short delivery. So they've done their homework well against Shreyas Iyer.
And we spoke about Shikhar Dhawan and Virat Kohli. Of course, in the absence of Rohit Sharma, their role becomes even more important. I'd love to talk a bit more about both of their innings. Virat Kohli, Ayaz, you talked about this. He got lucky, got a reprieve when he was on 1. But then when India were off to a flyer, they were scoring at about 8 or 9 runs per over. I'm guessing Virat Kohli didn't necessarily need to play that kind of stroke. He was looking good. The 2 or 3 strokes that he played, especially that 6 that he hit off Pat Cummins, certainly turned me on. So, Mandira, what did you make of Virat Kohli's innings? Slightly cryptic the way he got out. There wasn't any need for him to be that expansive and aggressive.
Yeah, but that's Virat, right? And at the end of the day, it's the first match and he's just starting to play. And in the first match, however, he should have been slightly more responsible because there isn't very much depth. It's like the lack of Indian all-rounders is so totally exposed. The batsmen cannot bowl, the bowlers cannot bat, So, usko dimag mein rakhte hue, you have to, be slightly more responsible and not play too aggressively. That especially applies to Virat. Of course, I think there's a lot also plaguing his mind as a skipper, right? Like he's gone on very vocally in a few times to talk about the absence of Rohit Sharma and not having a complete answer or any clarity on why exactly Rohit Sharma is missing. Because if it's just an injury, if a senior player is to be dropped, for example, then one understands his cloak and dagger stuff and it's very, very touchy to, break the news to him. But if it's an injury, what is the big drama? So I think there are lots of factors at play. At the end of the day, it's a game. It was a poor shot and hopefully he's learned from it.
And I believe the BCCI came out with a statement recently talking about the fact that Rohit Sharma is now tending to his ailing father in Mumbai. But of course, the communication coming much later than it should have. Ayaz, when we were talking prior to the first ODI, you spoke about the fact that you would perhaps play a KL Rahul up the order, perhaps open with KL Rahul along with Shikhar Dhawan. Would you be perhaps tempted to do something like this for the second ODI? Maybe play a Manish Pandey at number 5, which is what KL Rahul played in the first ODI, and open with KL Rahul, perhaps drop Mayank Agarwal?
Well, I don't know whether dropping Mayank Agarwal is the answer. I mean, I think he's got, he plays as an opener in many formats in domestic cricket, outside of that also. So maybe that's why they went for him. And then KL Rahul, because he's got such a wide range of strokes and he's got great, he can be very aggressive. So they wanted him as a finisher. So it didn't work out. I think, look, what's hurting India is obviously the absence of Rohit Sharma. There's no question about that. And also the fact that a Hardik Pandya is not bowling, because then he would have been, automatically your 6th bowler. And he's not likely to bowl, as he's made it plain in this series at least. He's still trying to strengthen his back. So there are a couple of issues. I would actually go back to Rahul as an opener. That's my personal opinion. Because if he and Shikhar Dhawan can, play out 14, 15, 16 overs and both are aggressive enough, not naturally aggressive, they give you a good foundation to build on, then Virat does not have to play the hurly-burly kind of a knock which he tried. He wanted to lead from the front, which is understandable. But maybe one stroke too many. I think also there's a bit of an ego involved there, with the Aussies, there's tu main in your face, unko batata hun, unko dikha dunga, all that also happens, which is great fun to watch. And I'm not decrying it because look, he's got a stupendous record and great body of work, and especially even in Australia. So it's not that he doesn't know what he's doing. It's just that sometimes things don't work. And that's what happened in the first match. But now it's become crucial. You lose the second match, the series is gone. It's a 3-match series. You lose the 2 matches in a row, then the third looks very dicey because you're on the back foot very strongly. You lose like that, and then your next white ball series also gets, you get affected. So it can have a snowballing effect, which is why winning the second match is very, very important, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Mandira, we saw a lack of intent from Ravindra Jadeja, but you could say that by then the game was pretty much lost and Australia had the game in the bag. But do you think Shikhar Dhawan's innings was a bit befuddling? Because, of course, when India were losing wickets and when he saw his compatriots getting out, he had to play the role of the anchor, as Ayaz mentioned. But when Hardik Pandya sort of took the pressure off him, his strike rate dropped and he ended up with 74 of 86 balls when he could have perhaps accelerated a bit more when Pandya was at the crease. Did you feel the same way?
I felt that Shikhar Dhawan knew it's just up to the two of them. And if he got out, there was just no hope whatsoever. So I think he just played a cautious innings. And he did a fantastic job as an anchor. I'm a big Dhawan fan, and I think thank God for him, he's kept it going. So yeah, that's that. As far as Shikhar Dhawan is concerned, I wanted to ask you, Ayaz, just to if we are just to see this current team as it is, Kedar Jadhav, I don't think has the experience to be played in this team as of now. Shreyas Iyer has had some experience with bowling leggies. Do you think he is somebody who can be, kind of trained or groomed for that kind of a all-rounderish role?
I
Or
doubt
would
it.
it have
He
to be
doesn't
one of
bowl.
his
He
partners?
doesn't bowl. He doesn't bowl even in domestic cricket. He doesn't bowl in Ranji and all. See, a lot of what has happened now is, I mean, Virat Kohli at the under-19 level was an all-rounder. He used to bowl and bat. You
Yeah.
know, and as they become batsmen and they concentrate more on batting, they want to give up bowling, or they don't enjoy it, or they are worried about injuries or
Yeah.
back and whatever. It's only guys who have a massive kujri of bowling, which is like Tendulkar or Sehwag. They want to they want to be in the thick of the action all the time, and they did a wonderful job of it, and therefore we got used to that kind of a thing. We have not had some uh, uh, you know a, a cluster of all-rounders all the
Yeah.
time. We've had Ashwin and Jadeja, and then Ashwin has lost his place in the ODI side, and for what, almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
So one genuine all-rounder you've lost. Jadeja, you've been the unfortunate part. You talked about Jadeja's batting, Anubhav,
Yeah.
but actually it's his bowling. He's not getting wickets. He didn't get wickets
Yeah.
in the IPL. He's not
Mhm.
got wickets in the first match. This was not a great track for spinners, but Adam Zampa picked up 4.
Right.
So I think by the time he came into bat, the match was more or less sealed. The result. So I think sometimes you just decide that I might as well spend more time in the middle preparing for the next match, rather than trying to hit 2 sixes and get out of the third ball. So that was not bad tactics. Even where Dhawan was concerned, I completely agree with Mandira that there is a yin and yang situation sometimes in a partnership, especially when you've lost the top order.
Yeah.
That I don't want to compete. I'm not competing with Hardik Pandya stroke for stroke. I'm partnering him. The guy is looking in terrific touch. He's got his rhythm right, his timing right. Everything he's doing is perfect. My job is now to ensure that this partnership survives. If I start competing with him and I'm the senior batsman, I'm a more renowned batsman, then you could actually be doing a disservice. So you hold one end up or give him more of the strike and stuff like that, which is where the strike rate you might see is not even 6. But a player like Dhawan, had he batted out, say another 8-10 overs, his strike rate would have been almost 100 or more, because he's got the ability, he's got the strokes, he's got the firepower to just switch gears very easily.
I think a big task at hand for the selectors, even moving forward, all those, all the youngsters knocking at the door of the Indian team, at least the batsmen need to understand that if they were just to focus a little more on their bowling and become genuine all-rounders, that's a huge gap in the Indian team, and an alarming one at that, and not a great one to be exposed at the hands of the Aussies. You know.
Yeah, but I don't see, I mean, Hardik Pandya had a very cryptic answer to this whole all-rounders problem. He said, why don't you look into the
My
Pandya
brother.
family?
The hint.
Then you got Vijay Shankar, who got injured. So he's
Experience.
one possible,
Yeah.
You don't have too much experience, but he's there.
Yeah, he's
So
there.
these are the guys you can, even somebody like an Ashwin, he could, I mean, the thing held against Ashwin in limited overs cricket is not his skill, it's his fitness. It's his, that he doesn't run swiftly enough. He's a liability in the field, and so on and so forth. But this was not the case 3 years back. He was a champion bowler even in T20 and ODI. He's got a lot of till the Champions Trophy in 2017. He was your main slow
Yeah.
bowler.
True.
And
So there is
speaking
Akshay
of
Patel,
Hardik
for
Pandya,
instance. Akshay is there. Akshay Patel.
Of course.
He can bat a bit. Yes, they're looking. There's the other boy, Harshal Patel, who played for Delhi. Also from he's been around for a while. He can bat a bit. But I think it's a tough call to make now, because you don't want somebody who bats a bit and bowls a bit, but you want somebody who's certainly very good in one department and also reasonably good in the other.
absolutely. And speaking of that extra bowling option or the lack thereof, Ayaz, what did you make of the news coming in that Hardik Pandya might be conserved right now by Team India for important matches such as the 2023 World Cup, or he might be working on a new action right now such that it doesn't put as much pressure on him while he's bowling?
I think he's going through a strong mentoring program, and he's wholly participating in that. So obviously he sees himself playing for 8, 10 years, 12 years for India. That's, I'm thinking aloud. And he doesn't want to do anything which will mess up his career by being, just brave for no reason. And so therefore what has happened is he's focused a lot on his batting. And we've seen even in the Indian Premier League, the way he went out, he's a wonderful striker of the ball, great timer. And today, he is a specialist batsman. So the onus on him is to ensure, till he gets back to bowling, that he keeps making these big scores, which doesn't. So there's no trade-off between another specialist batsman. He has to keep his place in the team, and which he should, because he's such a strong finisher. And remember, we are a team without Dhoni or a youngish Dhoni, not the latter Dhoni of the latter last 2 years of his career. And somebody like a Jadeja who pitches him in strokes, but Jadeja should start getting wickets. So there's lots of issues which are suddenly cropping up with this Indian team. We're still in the white ball cricket stage. We don't know what's going to happen with red ball. As we know now, Kohli is going to come back. Virat may or may not be there for the first 2 test matches. Sorry, Rohit may not be there for the first 2 matches, certainly. So it's a bit of a problem. I think this is looking very ominous to me, the way this tour has started and the way it might be headed.
That's right. A couple of questions coming in from some of our viewers. Here's Akshay Lokhande, who talks about, do you think the inclusion of T. Natarajan would be vital for death over bowling? Ayaz, you talked about this and you talked about being in favor of his inclusion for the second ODI. Mandira would love to ask you a similar question. Any changes that you would like to see made for the second ODI? I talked about the fact that you have Kuldeep Yadav, T. Natarajan, Shardul Thakur on the sidelines in the bowling department, but you have the likes of Shubman Gill, Sanju Samson on the sidelines in the batting. Any replacements that you would make?
Not for batting, but maybe Natarajan for Saini. Let's just to mix it up a bit, and on the back of his IPL form, I think he definitely could deserve a chance and would justify it.
Brilliant. And Kushal Palicha here, who says Michael Vaughan said that the Indian ODI team is too old school and predicted that they would lose all formats. How much of that looks reasonable? Is that Michael Vaughan just being a troll, or is there any truth or veracity in that statement?
Well, I gave you my opinion. I think it's looking ominous for India. I'm seeing the performance. Look, the Aussies are revenge hungry, revenge thirsty. There's no question about it. And they are fortified by the return of Smith and Warner. And Warner and Smith, in my opinion, are actually at the peak of their prowess. Maybe 2 years. Warner's 32, 33. Smith is just a couple of years younger. They're at the peak of their prowess. They may start fading, or at least plateauing, but that's not going to happen in this series, in my opinion. And then they've got young Labuschagne, who's there. So he's another formidable player. And then they've got guys like Stoinis and, even Pat Cummins is actually a decent batsman. I've seen him even at when he came on the last tour of India in the 4th test match, he made some 60, 70 in a test match. Mm-hmm. Very dogged batting approach, terrific bowler. So, I mean, man for man, right now it seems Australia is ahead, not just by a nose, but by some margin.
And doesn't help the fact that they're at home, right? I mean,
yes,
shade.
Of course. And they're at home.
Yeah.
And with the crowd being back as well, at least 50%
exactly.
of it.
But that's great for both teams. The crowd being back is actually fantastic. Even when you view the match and you see, instead of cardboard cutouts, you see real people.
And the simulator cheering and,
Yeah.
Nice to see action back in people there.
Well, we saw some protests also, but that's another matter. Yeah.
What was that?
Adds to the flavor of
securities has got to use this bio bubble scene, right? That koi nahi aayega.
No, but I'll say this, I'll say this, Anubhav, that Australia and India are among the 2 top teams in the world, or top 2 or 3 teams, and it's not a given that India will get rogered. I'm not saying that, but they really need to perk up very quickly. If they don't do that, it's going to be a bit of an issue by the time we reach the test matches, because the whole team can be under disarray. And remember, we're not going to have the captain after the first test match. And this is what everybody's been looking out for, the test series.
Absolutely brilliant. I mentioned at the start of the show that Ayaz and Mandira never lose their voice or their color. And today was yet another paragon of that. A big thank you to both of them, and a big thank you to all the viewers as well for having joined us for another episode of Cricket Pundits. Do join us again on the 1st of November at 6 p.m. Indian Standard Time as we look ahead to the 3rd ODI that takes place in Canberra. Until next time, enjoy the rest of the weekend and the cricket as well. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.